So I saw earlier today that this 83-year-old professor of, I believe it's computer engineering, Judea Pearl, has renounced an award given to him by NYU. And the reason given for it is because of a different award that the university's given to the Students for Justice in Palestine. And the reason for this is because Judea Pearl he's the father of Daniel Pearl, and some of you might not be old enough to remember this, or maybe it slipped your memory, but he was a journalist for the Wall Street Journal who was murdered in 2002, and he was actually beheaded by Al Qaeda terrorists in Pakistan. So for Pearl, the patterns of behavior from SJP, they don't constitute something that he would accept as befitting, continuing to associate with them. So he's essentially he's an alumnus. I don't know if he really has any function at the university. Obviously, having received an award, that's already an association. But I believe he teaches in California. If I'm not mistaken, he teaches at UCLA. But for a while, he was doing a lecture series over at the NYU College of Engineering. And the significance of this story is that I think eventually with the climate on campus, it's not just with respect to the Students for Justice in Palestine versus supporters of Israel. It's with a lot of different faculties and different groups and causes. They're going to create this growing, flight from the universities by people who have contributed in the past. So really what we're talking about is a conflict of interest between the people who actually are teachers and funders and, mainstays of university function, administration, people, the donors would be probably the most important area that I'm talking about. Those people are in direct conflict with a lot of the student body because the student population that comes in and a lot of the faculty in the humanities, they stand at cross purposes in terms of what they believe in. Okay, if you're a person who believes in capitalism, if you're a person who if you're a devout Christian, maybe you're not really into feminism. Maybe you're somebody who has in the past opposed same-sex marriage. You're probably not going to have as welcome of a greeting at a university now as you did before. But with respect to the Israel-Palestine conflict, Students for Justice in Palestine is a pretty common organization around the country. They have major chapters at a number of colleges, one of which is NYU, and that's pretty amazing if you really think about it. NYU, according to one estimate I saw a couple years ago, has a student body that's 30% Jewish. Yet you have a powerful organization, Students for Justice in Palestine. They're able to project enough power and get enough attention and have enough influence and enthusiasm among its membership to cause first of all, to win an award at the college. So think about it, a school that's 30% Jewish, according to some estimates, there is enough support for Students for Justice in Palestine, which many call an anti-Semitic organization, in order to, so that they're able to win an award, and now you're having one of the school's distinguished alumni, a member of the National Academy of Sciences, decide, well, I'm not going to associate myself with the school anymore. I'm giving back the award. So that's what's happening over there. And then you go to North Carolina. This is something that's raised a lot of red flags this past weekend among, critics of campus activity. Apparently, Congress gave sorry, the Department of Education granted $235,000 to fund a series of anti-Israel events organized by Duke University and the University of North Carolina that featured speakers and events tied to Palestinian terror groups. And now members of Congress are asking Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos in a letter sent Monday to investigate the events, which the lawmaker described as featuring severe anti-Israel bias and explicit anti-Semitism. So, this is something I might do a different video on. There was, for example, the rapper Tamer Nafar, who he's actually the front man for a rap group called Dam, which means blood in both Arabic and Hebrew. So he sang a song, and people are saying it's brazenly anti-Semitic. I heard the song. It is definitely provocative, and I guess if you want to be generous, you could say that he was being humorous and sarcastic in singing it. But I think that's better served doing a different video on it, and possibly getting a little more of an expert opinion on the other things that were going on. The journalist Amy Horowitz visited there, and he got the footage, but I haven't seen more of his long-form footage, which I'm very interested to see. It says, furthermore, examination of the official program reveals that several of the conference's speakers are actively involved in the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, according to Holdings' letter. The nature of these events calls into question the Department of Education's decision to grant the schools $235,000 in taxpayer funds. Lawmakers such as Holding maintain that federal dollars should not be spent to promote anti-Israel exhibits on campus. So I think that this is an excellent case of selective outrage on the part of people who are very, they're enthusiastic towards one cause, and yet they can't see how their enthusiasm basically undermines the institution that they're a part of. So the pro-Israel people, I would say, when they obsess over the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, they actually feed more, they feed into the fire, because a lot of people see some of these laws and regulations that they want to impose, some of which, by the way, could be constitutional. In the past, I've written articles where I say, well, I don't think these could be constitutional. Well, it's hard to tell. Some of them could probably stand up in court. But in terms of how it affects public image, people don't like to be told what they can and can't say. And what the regulations and laws do, even if they don't necessarily limit free speech, but they seem to discourage it. And a lot of people are saying, well, is this law being passed in order to limit our ability to criticize a foreign country? So this is a very common response that I hear from people towards the law, and that's the issue that I see coming on the pro-Israel side, that they think that the law or other regulations will resolve this issue. It won't, because people don't like to be told what to do in the United States. And on the other hand, why is it? It is a good question. Why are you giving $235,000 for blatant political propaganda that's directed towards a foreign country? It's not against a foreign country. So the U.S. foreign policy is currently oriented towards an alliance with Israel. So why is the U.S. funding activities that directly attack that relationship? Okay, again, I'm somebody, I don't believe in censorship, even for causes that I find are, something I would never support. The BDS movement, I would never support. So I don't believe in censoring them. I also think it's ridiculous that the government would, budget that much money to them when they could probably raise the money privately. They could probably, get some sort of donor to sponsor the event. There's plenty of foundations that do donate money to causes that are relevant to this particular issue. You know, there's the Tides Foundation. There are, there's a number of groups that will do it, and I'm not going to go into them, but they're there. It says further information about these events obtained by the Washington Free Beacon indicates that several speakers and participants in the events discuss holding meetings with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Palestine, or PFLP, a designated foreign terror organization. So, yeah, I don't believe. Look, I believe in campus freedom. I think people should have freedom of speech. I think that this is a little bit beyond freedom of speech when you talk about meeting with an armed group, an armed which has the PFLP. Okay, yes, is it subjective what's a terrorist and what's not a terrorist? I guess many people would say yes. The PFLP specifically, just to get so this is just to inform your opinion, and you can make the conclusion yourself. They are the group that largely pioneered the tactic in the 60s and 70s of hijacking commercial airliners and holding the passengers hostage. So if you don't call that terrorism, I think if the next time you step on a flight, you might want to reconsider, whether you think that you have an expectation of safety there. If you don't think that it's terrorism for somebody to hold you hostage for trying to fly to another country, then what expectation of safety do you have? I mean, the PFLP was by no means the only group to do this, but I think that they were the ones that popularized it as a tactic and might have even been the first to do it. I don't necessarily know the origin of it. And then you have, this is going on Emory's campus. It says the Emory Students for Justice in Palestine calls for schools to discipline Jewish student orgs after they react to, quote, anti-Semitic flyers. A Students for Justice in Palestine chapter at Emory University posted fake eviction notices on some students' doors. Now, this is something I've already gone over. I'm not going to rehash the whole story, but in summary, a typical tactic the SJP uses on campuses is to take these eviction notices and tape them onto the doors of Jewish students, and they say that this is in order to raise consciousness of the fact that Palestinian families are evicted from their own residences in the West Bank and Gaza. But first of all, so an eviction notice like this is, what they're trying to say is that this is done arbitrarily without any sort of, real discretion, which is not really the case. When the Israeli forces evict somebody from a home, in many cases the structure was built illegally, sometimes unsafely or something. And by the way, they also evict many times settlers from homes in Gaza, in the West Bank. Yeah, in Gaza, by the way, they evicted an entire communities of people from there in 2005. How do I know that? I was in the army at the time over there. I wasn't involved in the operation. I was still in training, but it was a very crazy time indeed. So they post this eviction notice on the doors of Jewish students, which, by the way, it violates the very principle that they talk about. What the SJP people will say, what the pro-Palestine activism groups say, such as the Jewish Voice for Peace, etc., is that Zionism is not Judaism, therefore anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitic. But in many cases, what they'll do is they'll put it on the door of people that they know are Jewish. And in some cases, if they don't know the person, it's possible to tell because you'll have a mezuzah on their door. Mezuzah is something like this. So you can see, here's an image of one. So this is a scroll with the Shema prayer in it. This is mounted on the doors of some Jewish students. So what they'll essentially do is they'll mount it they'll put these eviction notices on their doors. Now, the update that I have here is that apparently this was approved. This activity was approved by the Emory's Office of Residence and Housing. And it says the flyers were posted in unapproved places, however. So my assumption is that the Office of Residence and Housing was under the impression that these would be put on some sort of board, but they weren't. They were put on people's doors, which would be vandalism. And yeah, I think that this is really the climate that we're talking about. And my advice to people who have a problem with this, okay, I'm not going to give advice to the SJP people because I think that they're following basically their program for academia, which I don't think is going to lead to anywhere. They're not actually helping anyone by doing this, the Israel Apartheid Week or whatever. What they're really doing in many cases is harassing people, which is evident in stories like what happened at Emory. So, they can do whatever the hell they want, I guess, as long as they don't hurt people, which I think eventually they could. But as far as people who oppose SJP, who oppose the boycott campaign, the best advice I could give you is to commit not to donate money if you're an alumnus or if you're involved in a university community. Don't even donate 1 cent. Start to actually campaign among your donor community, among people who you think could influence the college, and tell them, look, we've been trying for so many years to do well for the university, to expand it in the case of Duke and North Carolina or whatever, and yet they take out federal grants in order to campaign against us, in order to basically say, well, our activities are now making our campus political and political to the exclusion of a certain segment of the campus. That's not something that people should donate money to if they have a problem with it. In fact, there should be a nationwide campaign of people, not just for this issue, for a lot of issues. A lot of these identity issues would probably fall apart if donor money started to dry up, because these kids they simply wouldn't have the money to actually mount these activities. They would have to start to raise it themselves, and then the people that they'd try to talk to would realize how ridiculous they are. So that's about it. Please like, share, subscribe, and also subscribe to me on BitChute at Starscream at Chef Leopard. On Gab, it's at Starscream85, and also on Minds.com, it's Chef Leopard. And have a great night.